Good morning, everybody. Behind me is Long Island Sound and Block Island. We're on the coast of Rhode Island. On this date, January 3, 1521, the Pope excommunicated Martin Luther. This is Europe around 1500, and note in the middle is the Holy Roman Empire, which is mostly Germany, but some other lands too. And if you look close at the Holy Roman Empire, you can see it's a collection of little states and kingdoms and duchies. And this is the context of the Luther story, a political jigsaw puzzle. Now, people during the Middle Ages were very pious. Here you can see people going on a pilgrimage. But people would go on pilgrimages. They had relics. They were tithing regularly. But the church was criticized. This is from Canterbury Tales, Chaucer in the 1300s. This is the pardoner who pardoned people if they paid. And then this is the friar, and he was known for high living and accepting bribes and not being very holy. So the church had critics long before Luther. Here's another illustration from that time period showing monks not sticking to the vows of celibacy and poverty, but, living large. In the 1300s, there was actually a split in the Catholic Church where the Pope moved to France, and here's the palace in France where the Pope lived. Now in Bohemia, you see that in the lower left, that's the Czech Republic today. There had been quite an active reform movement. This is about 100 years before Luther. And Jan Hus, pictured here, who was executed by the church, was an early reformer. So it's important to see that the Luther story just doesn't come out of nowhere. So these are some of the places in the Luther story. He was born in Eisleben, kind of in the middle. And he moved around in the eastern part of Germany, Saxony today. So even though he was in quite a localized area, his impact was quite big. So here's where he was born, in Eisleben. The house is still there. And as Luther grew up, he showed aptitude for schooling, and he went to the University of Erfurt, pictured here to be a lawyer. And he was pretty good. But he was restless, became a monk, and eventually ended up teaching here at the University of Wittenberg as a professor of scriptures. And he taught here until he died. So all through the turmoil of the Reformation, he was at this school. So one concept at the time was the treasury of merit. This was something that the church taught, that the Pope could dip into that and give merit to people. And out of this, or connected to it, is the theology of indulgences, where in a way you could sort of buy salvation. And Johann Tetzel, pictured here, was selling indulgences near where Luther lived. Luther was upset about that. The story is he nailed his 95 Theses to the church door for debate with other churchmen, but they've got reprinted and translated. Went all through Europe, and I think people forget that Luther grew up near Mainz, which is on the lower left here at the end of the blue line. And Mainz was famous for the beginning of the printing press. So here's Gutenberg working on the printing press. So part of the Luther story is that he lived in an area where printing had really flourished, and his stuff was reprinted. Well, here's our event. January 3, 1521, the Pope excommunicated Luther. This is after a series of warnings, so to speak. It was in Latin, but the Emperor Charles V on the left thought Luther should have a trial in Germany. And this is the famous council at Worms, where Luther says, "Here I stand, I can do no other," and the Reformation continues. So if you're in Eastern Germany, the province of Saxony, you can go to Wittenberg today. This is the tomb of Luther's grave, and if you get close, of course, you can see the stone. of the guy who was a monk and wanted to reform the church, but his actions led to or contributed to the Protestant Reformation.